In June this year, economists worried over the government announcement that the minimum support prices for all crops will be 50% above cost, with cost being computed as cost of inputs plus family labor. I mean, the formula is called A2 plus FL. Many economists raised inflation estimates in June for the rest of the year, but with Kharif season now behind us, what the country has actually harvested is a severe and unexpected food disinflation. While this is good for the urban poor and maybe even rural landless labor, the fall in food prices means that 9 crops are currently below the minimum support price. For some crops, the prices are about 6-7% below minimum support price. But for about 5 other crops, the selling price is more than 20% below MSP, and in some areas even 50%. So the questions we are asking today are: why are farmers not getting the minimum support price promised by the government with such fanfare? Is inflation control a wrong policy for India? 3, how does one solve rural distress if the problem is actually overemployment in agriculture? And 4, how does one resolve this entire issue of rural distress and farm incomes? I have 2 experts, 2 economists actually joining me. First, Dr. Ashok Gulati, former chairman of the Agricultural Prices Commission, and then Dr. Himanshu, who is associate professor at JNU. Well, let me first welcome Dr. Gulati, who is already seated. Sir, thank you very much for joining us. Well, straight away to the data that we have, 9 crops, including pulses and coarse cereals, are ruling at nearly 20 to 30% below minimum support prices. Clearly, states are not able to implement the policy. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's very clear that governments cannot swim against the forces of demand and supply for too long. And in so many commodities, there are market fundamentals of demand and supply that operate. And the basic rule of MSP is that it has to be a little below the market equilibrium price, with a view that when you bring the produce to the market should not crash. Now, if you announce a price which is way above the market equilibrium price, then everything will come to you. So you should be ready to procure. Now, you don't have an apparatus at present. The system is not in place. The money that will be required to procure literally everything, of all the pulses, of oil seeds and whatnot, it's not in 10,000, 15,000 crores. You need 100,000 crores to do that. You look at wheat and rice and where the food subsidy bills are, and you cannot do even wheat and rice in 5-6 states. Beyond that, market prices of paddy are 20% below MSP. So when you are starting a new thing in pulses or oil seeds, you should have a much better plan. And that requires at least 2-3 years of building up a system of procurement, stocking, and then releasing. Where do you release? What is the system in place in which you will be releasing? Also, MSP has to be dovetailed with the trade policy. I think the problem that we are harvesting today actually lies in when we had a bumper crop last year and we were still importing for the last 2 years massive imports of pulses. So there are accumulated reserves in the system. We were very slow in looking at what the trade policy is, and there was no connection of MSP policy with the trade policy. So I think it's a very poor functioning at the policy level, number 1. Number 2, announcing as a political, master stroke, but you don't have a system in place on the ground to give a support. This will boomerang, because farmers are concerned not with announcements, but with what they are actually getting. And now you take shelter, oh, there is high moisture content, therefore we will not. Why don't you fix up dryers in the markets? That is what the investment is needed in the markets. All the APMC markets must compulsorily have an infrastructure, including the dryers right there. So I think it's all just basic dishonesty, I would say, in the system.
No, dryers fixing in the markets, I don't think anybody has thought through so much. Is this a lack of administrative bandwidth or is it a lack of money?
I would say it's a poor policy. You cannot have an MSP just based on cost. Prices are determined by demand and supply. So we must understand how pricing is to be done in the country. So first thing is there is bankruptcy of policy thought. It's a poor policy to start with. Number two, you don't have an apparatus to give a support to that. Number three, you don't have the money to do at that scale that is needed if you want to do it. So all the three big failures.
Okay. All right. You know, you said that dovetail minimum support price with the trade policy. How are global food prices now? Is there a scope for raising tariffs now?
At present, I think we already have pretty high tariffs. So we have to wait. The situation is the crude prices were low, international prices of all agri-commodities were low. There is some turning around in international prices that will happen now because the crude prices have gone up, so the energy cost in agriculture will go up, the transportation costs will go up. So we hope in the next 3 to 6 months the international prices will take some rebound, whether it is sugar or whether it is milk or whether it is field crops. There would be some improvement. Then in the Indian case, because the rupee is also going down by 12-13%, there would be an impact that the import parity prices will go up in rupee terms. So they will be so I hope that in the next 3 to 6 months prices will take a lift. How much? We have to still see commodity by commodity, how much is the excess stock in the economy at present.
No, this is interesting. So you're expecting a rise in domestic food prices?
Yes, of course. Of course. There would be some improvement.
Well, I'll come to that, Professor Gulati, but let me proceed with this food prices trend that you are noticing. You know, the standout feature of CPI or consumer price inflation this year is the severe food disinflation. You're saying that that is going to end?
I don't think so. So all the estimation that has been done, I think you had the best so far. The future may not be that rosy as far as CPI is concerned in the next 6 months.
Okay, so we are in for a rise in CPI. That's interesting. You mean prices are going to harden?
Yes, yes.
All right. Well, let me come back to the topic at hand. State-wise, are you seeing any improvement? We heard about Madhya Pradesh Bhavantar scheme doing very well. So are at least some states doing good procurement?
I would say politically, because I consider this announcement of MSP as cost A2 plus FL. 50% on top of that, more a political, announcement. They will do some procurement in the states where elections are going to be, maybe Rajasthan, maybe Madhya Pradesh, or maybe in Chhattisgarh. All other states, you look at where the prices are. I mean, if prices are 5% below MSP, I would still give great credit to the government. But they are 30%, 40%, even 50% below MSP. It's an utter failure of the policy announcement.
You're not mincing words, sir. Well, 2 years ago, when I interviewed you on the same topic of procurement, you said that MSP works only for 2 crops in 5 states. Is it still the same numbers, no improvement?
No. In the 5 states that I say, in wheat and rice, in fact, during the last 5-7 years, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh have improved their system, but only for wheat and rice. They have a system in place. But for other crops, and now you want to do it for 23 crops across all India, the government will become a baniye ki dukaan. What are you doing? And that is why I say there is a bankruptcy in terms of policy thought. This is not the way to go. You will mess up the system.
Okay.
So please be aware. You want to help the farmer, we are all with you.
Yeah.
But give it directly through the income support.
Exactly. You know, this income support for farmers, is this doable? Are the, logistics in place to reach, first of all, to identify the right farmers and then reach them some amount of revenue?
Oh, yes. Yes. I think you can build that system. And I mean, India is fortunate today that the IT giant, IT expertise of this country has to be used for the masses. The top end must give service to the bottom end, and at a very low transaction cost, with all the intermediaries taken off, because this is where the corruption takes place. So you can directly put the money in their accounts. Once you do, okay, how much is land on per hectare basis? Telangana has gone ahead with that. Why can't the center do it? What is loan waiver thing? What you are doing is crude income support.
No,
and disturbing the credit markets.
Well, I think that's a fairly thorough decimation of the government's minimum support price policy, and some good advice that you are giving on how market infrastructure can be improved to serve farmers. Thank you very much, Dr. Gulati, for joining us. We have to take a quick break, and thereafter we look at life beyond minimum support prices. What can the government do to solve a very imminent problem of rural distress? We're going to be joined by Dr. Himanshu, the Associate Professor at JNU. Back in a jiffy.